Starfield's DLC is trash, no one's buying it, and Bethesda hopefully will soon join Ubisoft in bankruptcy. Yay, that's good.
This man is about to say the most absolute insane things about Starfield and its story DLC. It's just, we'll get to it in a second. A couple of months ago, a modding team crafted one of my favorite experiences of the year. It was a love letter to fans of Fallout and arguably rivals a lot of the AAA games I've played the past few years. Of course,
That is true. That is definitely true. So much effort went into this bad boy, and it works.
it had issues, a lot of technical bugs, but there was brilliance with the design of the world. The main story was well crafted with more than enough surprises and decisions. The factions had a surprising amount of depth. There was tons of unique weapons, armor, and other gear, probably well over 100 hours worth of content.
352 different kinks. Now, if that's not British, I don't know what is. And spoons.
And all of this was free, and hampered by the fact that Bethesda broke Fallout 4, something that still has never been fixed months later. I bring up Fallout London as an example that Bethesda's design has stagnated to a point that modding teams are putting out products that rival the paid stuff that they're crafting. Shattered Space was, on multiple occasions, compared to a traditional BGS experience, with Todd Howard even saying it was similar to Far Harbor, and the truth is, it was not.
Oh, that's such a bald-faced lie, and everyone with a brain knew that that's going to turn out to be the case.
Reflected this opinion on Twitter with my first impressions that Shattered Space felt like cut content from the base game. It truly feels that sometime in development of Starfield they felt that they had the necessary content that they wanted on day one and took this chunk out to use later as a paid expansion. $30 might I add. House of Alrune was mysteriously absent from the base game, and based on what I just played, it feels as if this started out as a giant side quest that turned into not much more than that. It's the only thing that explains this, and hey, maybe it's wrong, but Dazra is a decent sized city with an open world that feels just like every location in the base game. You get 5 hours of main story, 5 to 10 more of side content, barely any new weapons, they're mostly reskins, no armor that was worth touching, no new skills, no new gameplay mechanics, no real companions, nothing for your ships or halves. It's pathetic, which maybe explains why Bethesda.
Typical Bethesda experience, okay? Typical. Also, this woman is kind of leaning in on her voluptuous behind slightly. She's doing that. And Todd Howard, probably on stilts, is still arguably shorter than her. Now, I think that all of Bethesda's problems are stemming from the fact that Todd Howard is a fucking midget. And I think it's pretty obvious.
Wasn't so keen on giving out any review codes for this expansion ahead of time. And I said as much in my own review of this expansion, but today it's become quite obvious this misfire is not just a sentiment that I or maybe yourself holds, but most of the Starfield player base. A player base that, might I add, was already pretty torn over this.
A player base that doesn't exist. We watched the numbers for the game. On average, Starfield was sitting around 7 to 8k-ish max average players per day. Which is not that great for a Bethesda game, that's one. But still, that's honestly quite a lot. But it's a Bethesda game, okay? The Bethesda fanboys are insane. And when the expansion launched, it maxed out at like 20k-ish maximum players. First of all, you need to consider one thing. People got this expansion for free if they bought the deluxe edition. And trust me, people buy the deluxe edition. A lot of people bought that, and those people didn't even honestly care to play the expansion. After 3 days, after 2 days, it was down to an average of 15k. No one is playing this DLC. No one is probably buying this DLC. The only people who are doing this DLC most likely are people who got it for free. It is insanely bad.
This game, and many just chose not to even bother with more Starfield, but those brave souls that coughed up $30+ mostly feels anger with what they just played. Myself, I feel concerned as Bethesda seems to be lost.
I did not buy Shattered Space, nor I ever will.
Now, in terms of Starfield's performance right now on the Microsoft Play Store most played games for Xbox and such, it's actually not even in the top 25 so far for Starfield. It's sitting right around 26.
Being under farming simulator. Also, Fallout 76 and Halo Infinite being under farming simulator. I mean, that's poetry. Now, Starfield is slightly above farming simulator.
Maybe that goes up in the coming days, but definitely an indicator that there's not exactly a large portion of the player base going out of their way to play this expansion. And if you actually check SteamDB right now, it peaked at around 21,000 players on Monday when the DLC did release, and it's slowly already declining. It got around 15,000, its 24-hour peak. 21,000 overall is its peak. So that is, it doubled its player base, so some say that's a success, but I mean, the grand scheme of things, Fallout 4, when that TV show launched, when they launched that next-gen update, which was right around the 22nd, the player base skyrocketed. And then you look to...
True. Everything except 76 got a major boost. 76 is trash.
Cyberpunk 2077, when they had their first expansion release and update 2.0, which released right alongside it, the player base exploded to over 250,000 players. That's huge. And
yep.
let's be honest, Starfield didn't start off with 0 players. It had 330,000 players. These guys just...
Yeah, look at this. Can you even figure out where the fuck the expansion released here? You probably can't, but still. Point being,
aren't coming back, and that is for a reason. Another game, Elden Ring. Great example of this. When Shadow of the Erdtree released, it was over 750,000. Obviously, it's a little different, from software, top of this industry, but still. The point is that Starfield's DLC has not been met to really any interest from the gaming industry because people just don't care about this game. And then those who actually did even bother to play it, well, look at what they got. Mostly negative. 34% of these reviews out of 1,600.
The only reason Starfield had a positive review at the start is, by the way, Bethesda fanboys. Again, Bethesda fanboys are a real thing, and there's a lot of them because Bethesda is one of the big game makers. They have a long-standing reputation of making stuff that was actually not even if good, at least playable. Again, greatest example of this is Skyrim. I technically don't like Skyrim. I don't think it's a great game, but I still have had $100 into that game, and I enjoyed it. I don't think it's great. I don't think it's the best. I think it's kind of mediocre, but I still poured in $100 into it. But Starfield, I quit after 4.
Are positive. That is a nightmare scenario for a studio like Bethesda, and it shows that people overall just do not like this DLC. And if you get to the nit and grit of these reviews, it's even funny. The positive ones are negative. I love this one. The most helpful review in the past day: the story is boring as fuck, would recommend if you have insomnia and need to work the next day.
That's good, man. The story, we knew that this expansion is going to be a disaster. It's made by the same people who made Starfield, the same story writer who made the storyline of Starfield originally, and the storyline was shit. And that loser went on a Twitter rant about how great he is as a writer and how everyone doesn't understand his greatness and how great of a job he did. It's disgusting. It's pathetic.
And then even this one, another positive, which says, it's more Starfield, neither good nor bad. I just love how they give it a positive, but I guess that's just Steam system. Just meh. Not bad enough to not recommend it, but also not good enough at a full price. Wait for a sale. Another person saying not worth the price. No new mechanics or gameplay additions. This is easily one of the worst.
We knew that there is not going to be a single new mechanic or gameplay fix because, well, Starfield came out. Guess what? The shooting's bad, the itemization is bad, the customization is bad, the skill system is bad, everything is fucking bad, right? What does Bethesda do? Well, after a year, they give you an FOV slider, a neat button, and some shitty rover and mini maps. That's it. That's what they do. They give you a city map. Yeah. In a year, they didn't fix a single thing because the game's already perfect in their opinion. So why would they ever fix anything?
DLCs I've ever played.
And because the game's already perfect, why the hell would they add anything new or change anything in the DLC? It's already perfect.
And I think you got to really understand the landscape of DLCs. We had Shadow of the Erdtree. We had Phantom Liberty. Those set a new example. And even Bethesda in years past, they had some fantastic story expansions. Everybody talks about Far Harbor, but this is no Far Harbor. It's a laughing stock. And for some reason, the only people that doesn't understand that seems to be a couple of Starfield supporters and Bethesda themselves. Disappointing, can't recommend this, sorry BGS. Starfield and now Shattered Space feels like a game made by a bunch of retired in-place managers doing the bare minimum to meet requirements. No new features, no fixes, and the fact that the game is still a boring mess. Not even an attempt to fix the game's core issues. The writing of this game is just awful. Congrats, Todd. You handcrafted a planet this time. Even the positive reviews, again, are all negative comments. They say less is more, and with Shattered Space, it's true. Bethesda giving you less while asking you for more money. And yeah, that price point of $30 is just absolutely ridiculous, especially with your...
Well, still not, still better technically than Diablo 4's Vessel of Hatred expansion that's going to be $80.
Only getting about 10 to 15 hours worth of content. I don't even care if you absolutely love this expansion. It should not be $30 at all. But even on the Starfield subreddit, these are the most staunchest supporters of this game, and it's the same thing. People are just like, wow. Mostly negative rating on Steam. Some of the top comments here. I won't go into full summary of the DLC, but I think it's just a shame that one place we wanted to go for an entire year was so underwhelmingly delivered. We get a chance to visit the capital of this mysterious third faction and surprise half their main cities blown up. They have no unique faction ships yards. They have the same franchise stores as everyone else in the settled system.
Dude, how shills are trying to tell you that, oh my god, House Varun is so unique. Look at the dirt rendering here. It's so different than everywhere else. If someone tries to tell you that this expansion looks unique because House Varun is unique, you can instantaneously tell that they're just chilling. That's it.
Clothing is exactly the same, with a couple pieces being altered slightly, including the weapons. No unique weapons other than essentially reskins. There's none of the mystery we saw in New Atlantis' embassy, none of the poison.
Well, there is a little bit of mystery. They have face tattoos like a bunch of retarded yahoos for no reason.
Poison trees which cause hallucinations, blah, and they go on and on. I've been addicted to Cyberpunk the last few months. Going from that Shattered Space made me realize how bland the writing is in Starfield. It's like it was made for kids, honestly. I agree. Well, we waited a whole year and got 10 hours away.
Autistic kids.
What seriously feels like cut content from the base game, a sentiment I think we all have. They also repeatedly compared it to Far Harbor, which is one of the best DLC Bethesda ever made. There's almost nothing actually new here, just reskins of pre-existing items. Yeah, it's dropping because people are finishing and going, that's it. Like Starfield SS starts well, and then you look around and realize what could have been. It's overpriced for the content it delivers. Shattered Space, to me, was a massive disappointment, and it goes on and on. These reviews from the most staunchest supporters of Starfield are absolutely brutal. And hey, look, we'll see what happens. Maybe Bethesda responds to some of these Steam reviews. They did it before. Remember that? They respond.
The fact that this woman has a face tattoo in front of her eyes, and when she blinks,
Bethesda responds to some of these Steam.
As you can see, they tattooed her eyelids.
Reviews. They did it before. Remember that? They responded to people saying that the game was boring in the initial launch. This was from their customer support team. Some of the Starfield planets are meant to be emptied by design, but that's not boring, which I found that absolutely hysterical when they did that.
Oh, brah. Oh, let's go back to the good times of Todd Howard defending the game. Do you think the astronauts were bored when they were in space? No. So why are you bored in Starfield? Have you tried playing the game the correct way? That's all things that they said about Starfield when they tried. They had automated ChatGPT responses, and half of them were, well, have you tried to play the game in the fucking correct way, you imbecile? Which is the most hilarious thing ever, honestly.
Responding to those reviews that way, and I truly feel like Bethesda actually feels that way.
Oh, look at that! He's getting at least like 3 centimeters here, Toddy boy.
Based on everything that we're about to go over and the things that they've said in the last couple of months. But the reality is, I mean, the Steam page is mixed for a reason. 59%, under 60% of people actually enjoyed Starfield. That says a lot, and the fact that Bethesda is not learning any lessons from that, it's startling to me. It makes me extremely worried for everything that they do moving forward. Now, to Metacritic, it just continues to get worse. Shattered Space has a 54. This is lower than Fallout 76, just to understand how bad this actually is.
Oof.
And these reviews are, again, extremely brutal. Metro Game Central gave it a 40, the exact opposite of what Starfield needed, with a DLC expansion that magnifies the parent's game's failings and sidelines its more positive elements. The Guardian, the problem is very little of what you asked for. that turns out to be any fun. Fetch quests that offer next to no payoff, lots of that in the side content, are compounded by annoying travel. You have to make an unappealing choice between the vein-popping frustration of trying to drive across the craggy, impassable, boulder-strewn landscape, or giving up and schlepping there on foot. And yeah, that land vehicle that we got in Starfield, say what you will, but the game's maps just were not built around it, and it shows when you're trying to traverse the terrain of Shattered Space and Dazra and Varun Kai.
Imagine when there's something that Ubisoft got better than you, but Star Wars Outlaws aim.
It doesn't work all that well, and often I found that extremely frustrating myself. Game Rant, at times I was blown away by Shattered Space, beautifully rendered new areas. Again, that's the only compliment I can give to this game. It looks beautiful at times, not just except for when you get in front of players' faces or other characters and then you see their horrific wooden facial animations. But other times my immersion was ruined by annoying progression killing quest bugs. I have a lot of that, including enemy AI just not working at all, and weird graphical oddities. The DLC is uneven to say the least, and that's something Starfield fans should take into consideration when deciding if they want to play this. And the reviews go on and on. You get that sentiment. There are some positive ones, one in which from
God damn, this is gameplay.
Xbox era that gave it a 90. I think they gave the game a 9.7, so I guess not too surprising that there are some people that absolutely...
Well, it's called Xbox era.
...love this, and I think that if you absolutely love that base game of Starfield, I think a lot of them are more than satisfied with that. But I think with this being so divisive, I think a lot more people just are unhappy with this and think that Starfield needed to have a bigger change. It needed to have a No Man's Sky, Cyberpunk 2077, Phantom Liberty revamp, and Bethesda just doesn't seem interested in that at all. Now, from some YouTube...
Bethesda's probably interested in that, but the reality is, do you think Bethesda can pull off something like Cyberpunk 2077 turnaround? Of course not. Bethesda can't pull off even the slightest bit of a redemption story, let alone a Cyberpunk 77.
We saw, again, more brutal reviews. Luke Stevens, he said, finished Shattered Space accidentally in an afternoon. Again, this is short. It's about 5 hours of the main story. I thought there'd be a lot more, but the main story is very short. Simply, it's more Starfield. The writing is painfully dry. I almost fell asleep so many times. The characters act like they don't want to be there, and the lack of optimization is painful, like the base game. Mr. Matty Plays, he just interviewed Todd Howard over the summer, one of the most staunchest supporters of Bethesda, but he does often offer...
By the way, two enormous shells.
Very fair criticism of this company. He said, Shattered Space is not good at all. The exploration is still somehow extremely lacking. The main story is ridiculously short. It ran like crap on the Xbox Series performance mode. I said this in my own review. I had that 60 FPS mode running, and it felt like the game was running often at about 20 when you're traversing the open world. There isn't any new companions, and Dredja barely reacts to what happens around her, despite how the base game builds her story, and the list goes on and on. To be clear, because I know how Twitter is, I enjoyed Starfield a lot at launch. I like it a lot more than Fallout or Elder Scrolls, no, but I put over 100 hours in it, and yeah, people were coming after him for these opinions that he shared here. Why do we as gamers listen to one person?
Well, yeah, of course people are gonna come after him, because he typically never says anything even remotely lukewarmly negative about any of these things, because that's how it works. And when he does say something, obviously people are going to come after him, because what the fuck, you have never been negative about anything Xbox in your life, so how dare you? People are going to be pissed. But, you know, that's the kind of audience you create. That's the kind of audience you nurture.
Person's opinion and make it shape our perception of something. I will never understand this. People go and play the DLC yourself and form your own opinion. Stop being sheep, people. Well, there's a 36% rating on Starfield's Steam page, so I think that those reviews say a lot, along with the Metacritic reviews. I mean, if overwhelmingly people do not like this DLC, I think that says a lot about the quality of this content. I'm sure that there's going to be a small portion of people that absolutely continue to suck off Bethesda and their game design, which is stagnated, but I find it ridiculous in my opinion, and all it does is continue to let this company be complacent when they should not be. They should be freaking out. They should be looking at their game design and realizing this is not working. And then I love this comment. Someone speedran the main...
There is no way that Bethesda can change anything. It's just death now, and that's it.
Quest without stopping to talk to anyone else. It's a 5-hour main story, and that's being generous. I just... play the expansion for yourself if you want to, but there isn't much here, and what's here, it's laughable in my opinion. But ultimately, all these individuals that want to go to the defense of Bethesda can't change this reality, and this 42% is now a lot worse, and it's mostly negative now. But we did see Emil Pagliarulo. He is one of the lead designs at Bethesda. He's done a lot.
Our boy Emil. He's the one. He's the one who is going to tell us that we don't understand his genius and how great Starfield is, and that we're uneducated losers. Ah, yes, yes.
A lot of the writing for these games, and Ben, let's just say, he's been very controversial with a lot of the things he said over the last couple of years in terms of how he approaches game writing.
Guy literally has a fucking a low polygon scorpion tattooed on his arm. Okay. This guy just, he's an NPC at its finest.
Of how he approaches game writing. And Emil said this about Andreja and Shattered Space, which I find hilarious now in hindsight since I've already played the entire expansion, which is about 10 to 15 hours. He said, clearly Andreja will have a particular investment and opinions about the events of Varun Kai. There's no difference between her and any other companion. There's no unique perspective or quest or any connection to Varun Kai. And I think that's the frustrating part for so many people, especially when you're comparing...
You know what someone like Emil probably does in a situation like this? He most likely made it that Andreja stops at a random place and looks somewhere, and that's her deep immersion into the story and what's happening with her autistic people.
This expansion to Far Harbor, an expansion that you had a companion like Nick Valentine that had such a massive connection to the story and characters, and they utilize that to its fullest potential. Here, though, they don't do that with what is considered probably the best companion.
Also, why the fuck does Andreja not have tattoos on her face like a dipshit? That's so confusing.
In the base game. But Emil had a lot more to say in an interview with Games Radar, and it gets absolutely so much more insane with these remarks. It might not be everyone's cup of tea, but what is as...
the penguin. The penguin. 100% the penguin. It's currently popping off.
Starfield Shattered Space launches, and yeah, design director Emil Pagliarulo on how Bethesda went from selling horse armor to visiting distant planets. And this is where it starts. He says, the development of new IP was always going to be an ambitious, disruptive undertaking, especially when it comes to the perceived cost of a new Elder Scrolls or Fallout, but Pagliarulo is confident that Starfield is following the right trajectory. Oh, really? Okay. He says, nice. I think in a lot of ways, Starfield is the hardest thing Bethesda has ever done. We pushed ourselves to make something totally different to just jam into an Xbox, the biggest...
What do you mean totally different? You literally gave the player dragon shouts. You literally gave the player dragon shouts.
Richest space simulation RPG anyone could imagine. I don't care what you say, but Mass Effect on so many different levels is so much more grander than everything that Starfield is. That game came out a decade plus ago, that trilogy, and I still hold it so much higher regards than this. But he does go on. He says, what we pulled off makes Starfield something...
By the way, the fact that these enemies teleport is insane, because there's not a single game where people like teleporting enemies.
Of a technical marvel, especially with that game engine. Okay, I can see that perspective. It's also in a lot of ways the best game we've ever made. Okay, maybe from a gameplay perspective, but people love these Bethesda RPGs for the storytelling, the writing, which is not there at all with Starfield. And in many ways, it pales in comparison in so many different ways to just Skyrim and Fallout 4. But on a technical side, sure, the combat is better than they've ever done before. And they improved on a lot of the other aspects of their game design. But in this age, I mean, you're looking at the rest of the industry and developers are doing laps around you. The way that I see Bethesda, they're like that guy who's opening that champagne bottle, celebrating all the way at the bottom as there's so many other individuals ahead of them. That's Bethesda modern day nowadays.
Yep.
But for us, most importantly, Starfield has its own unique personality and now sits right next to Fallout.
Yeah, well, you can definitely call it unique. As in, do I need to go on a rant how little fucking sense does the Starfield story ever make? The fact that the pirates are such a ginormously large faction that they would never exist because they would just form you know, a new faction in general and they would stop being pirates. The fact that the terror morphs would make no sense. Like, nothing here makes any sense.
the Elder Scrolls. I would love to know how he came to this conclusion, because there's nothing about this lore, the universe, that is interesting. And say what you will, but Starfield borrows a hell of a lot from Fallout and the Elder Scrolls. He does continue. He said, this article says that Bethesda is proud of Starfield and confident in its future. So if you were looking at them and hoping that they'd be, hoping to change people's minds about this game, they seem to be more than happy with how this game was perceived, which I find laughable. They view the broad conversations that emerged after its launch as proof the studio is right to try something new. It might not be everyone's cup of tea, but what is, we created a new IP from the ground up and an experience that is absolutely unique on consoles. Again, the concept has been done by many other development teams. No Man's Sky is a great example, and they did such a better job at it. But obviously, it doesn't have RPG or writing and stuff like that, I suppose. And I'm not saying Starfield is better or worse than any other game, just different in what we are.
I am saying that Starfield is definitely worse than any other game on many different levels. It's actually kind of insane and not even close. Okay, is there anything else? Is this just the article?
And it makes me actual story outside of mediocrity with this company. And I think people need to understand the traditional Bethesda experience that we just got with Shattered
is dead. I think that's a fitting end for this video. Anyway, that was Legacy Kill HD. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.